Listening to understand instead of to reply is one of the hardest things you can do, especially in a conversation where you're wanting to explain yourself, to justify your perspective or your actions. But listening to understand is one of the most important things you can do in those conversations that are difficult or that are headed off the rails. Do you want to achieve your goals, but anxiety is tripping you up? Like to keep those fun weekend plans, but depression has you canceling again? Hey, I'm Lori, dog mom, lover of nature, and hygge enthusiast. Positive psychology skills help me overcome chronic severe PTSD. If you're ready to learn how to overcome your anxiety and depression and rediscover happiness and purpose in life, then get your cozy on and let's get started. In honor of Leave a Review Day on the 22nd of October, we are having a Leave a Review contest. So if you give us a 5-star rating and provide a review and send that to me, you will be entered into a contest for a $25 Amazon gift card. Woohoo! You just send your pictures or your screenshots to Lori at practicalsolutionsforptsd.com and you'll be entered to win. If you need some help in knowing how to submit a review, because of course they didn't make it easy, send me an email, same place, Lori at practicalsolutionsforptsd.com, and I will get you that information. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Practical Solutions for PTSD. Today we're going to talk about a subject that affects everybody, and that is communication, specifically when that communication goes just a little bit sideways or off the rails. It's happened to everybody. But hopefully today we're going to give you some tips, one, to spot what's causing it, and two, how to fix that and to bring more healing to your relationships. So have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, that did not go the way I meant it to? Or that when I said that, it came out all wrong. Or I was trying to set a boundary and it came across harsh. Or maybe you're a little bit like me, and when you're in the middle of all this, you just shut down because you don't know how to say what you want to say or how you really mean it. So you just shut up altogether. None of those are helpful, by the way. But if this sounds familiar, you are definitely in the right place today, because we're going to unpack why communication so often goes off the rail and how to break the pattern so we can build healthier and more peaceful relationships and connections with those that we love. Better communication isn't just about words. Obviously, words are an important part of that. But it's also about creating a safe space for communication, for understanding the other person on the other side, and for building a connection between the two people. So when we start to change the way we communicate, we start to change our relationships, and even that can even lead to healing. If there's been wounds in that relationship, this is a way that could potentially lead to healing. And for those of you that are followers of Christ, or just simply like good wisdom, because there's good wisdom found in Scripture, Proverbs tells us that a gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger. We want to speak with truth and gentleness. That's where we want to go. So the first thing we're going to talk about is why communication breaks down. These things can also be worse or easier to fall into if we find ourselves stressed, anxious, or emotionally tired. So number one is assumptions and mind reading. And I have to be honest, this one is super easy for me to fall into. And I'm sure there's many of you out there that are saying, amen, sister, count me amongst that group. This one is so easy to think that you know what the other person is thinking or what they meant by what they said. And we assume that we know. We expect to just know. We expect the other person to just know, either that we want them to mind read us or we're trying to mind read them. Both directions. We assume that we know what they're saying and we think that they need to know what we're saying without really explaining it. And trust me, speaking from experience, it doesn't work either direction. As well as you may know somebody, you cannot read minds. It never hurts to ask for clarification. So maybe you're texting someone and they fail to text you back. You're like, oh, this person must be mad. Or they took what I said the wrong way. Or they're just being a total jerk. I saw a video on Facebook the other day of someone illustrating this where a couple was texting back and forth. And the husband was at the store just being totally jolly and happy. He was super excited and having all these warm, cozy feelings about his family. His wife's at home texting him, and every reply that she gets from him, she's like, "Oh, he's mad at me. Oh, we just really need to talk when he gets home." And then he texts her, "I love you." She's like, "Oh, he wasn't upset with me after all." Because she was mind reading and assuming the whole time. But truthfully, we don't know what the other person is thinking until we ask. Even with those people that we know really well, we can't assume. We need to ask and be clear in our own communication and not expect them to just read our mind. We need to be very clear with our expectations, very clear with what we're trying to say. Especially when it comes to asking them to do something, we need to clearly lay that out and what we're expecting from them and why we need it, when we need it by, etc. So just really clear communication. The number 2 thing is emotional flooding. So this happens when we ourselves are triggered emotionally and your body can go into that fight, flight, or freeze zone. So you may feel your shoulders tensing up or your gut clenching, your heart rate starts to go up, your breathing could change because you yourself are being triggered by that conversation. Something happened that hit one of your hot buttons and it's causing the your emotional temperature to go up. And it can make your words sharper or more defensive. Logic and empathy can go straight out the window because you're emotionally triggered in that moment. And so you're not really thinking logically or empathetically. It's so important to recognize when your body starts doing this, when it starts emotional flooding, because this is a sign, a huge sign, for you to take a pause and step back. So if you recognize this, like, oh man, my shoulders are tensing, my gut's clenching, before I say anything and get myself in hot water that I will regret later, I need to take a pause, take a break, and step back. It's an excellent time for you, especially the more emotionally aware you are of yourself. It's a great time to do that. Now, if you're seeing it in the person you're communicating with that you hit a trigger, careful in how much you try to moderate for them because that can come across as very condescending. But you could say, "Did I say something that hit a button? Was there a misunderstanding? I apologize." Or you may know what button you hit. And you can right then and there, just like, "I am really sorry. I didn't mean it to come across that way. I apologize. I shouldn't have said that," whatever. And it's something like these emotional floodings that you can see in the other person or feeling yourself are great flags when to start de-escalating the conversation and taking a step back. Which leads into number 3, which is the tone of the words. And have you ever noticed that when you get upset or angry, your pitch or how fast you talk gets faster? Like the angrier you are, the faster you talk, and you talk faster, 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 because you're really angry. You've got all these words flooding. You're trying to get it out. That's the pace, and the pitch will go from like moderate to it keeps going higher. So you'll get this higher pitch to your voice, or if you're really anxious, if you're angry, it could drop lower. You could get this low, threatening tone in your voice. You know your voice best, and the people that know you well can pick that up. But if you pick up that your pitch is changing, like that it's going up or down, and the pace is picking up, these are 2 key indicators that you need to take a step back. Another one is the volume. Some people, when they're angry, they get really, really quiet. Other people get very loud. I've seen them on both sides. Both of them can be devastating in a conversation. I have been quiet yelled at, and it was just heartbreaking. I've also been screamed at. In some ways, being screamed at was easier, but both of them, the volume, you know what your volume, you should know yourself if my volume goes up or down. And it's a good indicator that you need to take a step back. And also the timbre. So this could get in where you're getting sarcastic or harsh in your language, condescending, whiplash type comments, the type of thing in the timbre of your voice you can start picking up on that as well. And this is another indicator that you need to take a step back in the conversation. And you might just say something like, "Look, I know I'm getting upset right now. I do want to finish this conversation with you, but right now I need to take a step back." So number 4 is unhealed triggers. And at times we're not necessarily reacting to the conversation in the moment. We're reacting to old wounds. And this could be especially true if it's a relationship that's been going on for a while. And we all do it. We all screw up and we all transgress against the people that we love at some point or the other. We all do things wrong. And there could be something that was a wound that was never properly healed, and never properly dealt with, that this current conversation is triggering, which could make it go off the rails very, very fast. So something to be aware of. So maybe like in this conversation, you're feeling unheard or dismissed because of a phrase that they said or a tone in their voice, which was not intended by that person at all, but it could be someone else completely different that said the same phrase or the same tone that you're remembering from the past, and it's an emotional trigger, an unhealed trigger that's going to make the current conversation go off the rails very quickly. So this is why self-awareness is very powerful in communication. You need to know what's happening to yourself so that you can moderate yourself in that current conversation. And when you're being triggered for whatever reason, it's a great time to just take a pause and step back for a moment. And maybe you just need to take a walk or step away for a minute, clear your mind, or even just pause for a few seconds in that conversation and say, look, I just need to reset for a minute. These are all things that can be indicators that your conversation is going a little bit off the rails there. So again, from a scriptural perspective, James tells us everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, which is simple, but it's definitely not easy. I know when I was growing up, my parents used to tell me, God gave you one mouth and two ears, use them proportionately. So listen before you react. And that's not always easy, but it's definitely something that we need to make a practice in our conversations, especially those tough ones that might be getting a little emotional. So how do we break this pattern? So we've identified some things that could go wrong in a conversation. It could be something that goes wrong consistently in your conversations, that you find this happening a lot, and it's something you want to change. Change is possible. It will take a lot of work and dedication, and it's a little bit at a time. You're not going to change everything all at once, but you can do it just a little bit at a time. And step 1 is to pause before reacting. And I've mentioned this already some, but when you feel those emotional surges, or you feel those triggers going on, or you hear your pitch or volume changing, etc., it's a great time to pause just for a moment. That's your cue. Things are not going well. So let's take a breath. Just take a moment to breathe. We're going to take a breath. 5 seconds can make a difference. Maybe it needs to be longer. You might even need to say, look, I want to be able to finish this conversation with you. I don't want to leave you hanging. But at the same time, this is really triggering for me, or I'm getting really upset, and I don't want to say something I regret later. I just need a minute to get to walk away and clear my head and clear my thoughts. And I'll be right back. We can talk about this. But I don't want to say something I regret. I need to step away for a minute. Or maybe you just need to think it through. It might be something that takes a little bit longer, and you need to process this and think through what you really mean and not just reacting emotionally in the moment. So I do recommend communicating why you're pausing to your partner, whoever you're talking to. Having been on the other side of that, when someone just decided they need to walk away and clear their head without really communicating it, I felt dismissed and unheard. I know this is how I felt in the moment. I felt like I was unimportant, where they really just needed to get away and clear their head because they were being triggered or they were feeling emotional or whatever. So just communicate this to the person that you're talking to. Just like, give me a minute. I need to clear my mind. Maybe if it's someone you have a long-term relationship with, you could just have a signal or keyword or something that you say that triggers or notifies the other person that you need time, but that you will be back. So step 1 is pause before reacting. Step 2 is clarify and don't assume. Now this is a really huge thing in active listening, which we'll get to in another podcast because there's a lot of information involved in that. But the response to jumping to conclusions and mind reading, which I'm really bad at, or I have a tendency to be. I try very hard not to anymore. I've worked on that for a while. But the the solution to that is to clarify, to ask questions. Instead of jumping to conclusions, let curiosity have a little bit of leeway there. Can you tell me what you meant by that? Or is this what you were really trying to say? Or this is what I'm hearing right now. Is this what you mean? Did I get this right? Can you please just tell me what's going on right now so that I understand? Or did you really mean this? It's amazing how much conflict can be prevented just by checking our understanding. Now, I have a friend of mine who's really good about this, and I really admire that in her. We'll be talking or not talking, and she will assume something, and she'll be struggling with it. She'll come back and say, "Hey, Lori, this is what I was thinking or felt from what just happened. Is this what you meant?" I'm like, no. It was the furthest thing from my mind. And I'm so glad that she comes to me and asks, because it gives me the opportunity to clarify it and remove this burden of pain from her, because it wasn't one I meant to put upon her. So when she comes and clarifies that with me, I'm so thankful, because it keeps things clear between us, and there's not, or she's afraid that she's offended me or upset me or that, whatever's going on. She takes the time to clarify, and that just makes a huge difference. Step number 3 is to own your part. And this can be hard, especially when you feel like you're in the right and the conversation went off the rails and you are partly responsible for that, but you were right on the issue. It always helps to approach it with humility. Now, I was in a conversation, to this day, I'm not really sure what happened. I tried to figure it out, but the other party would never tell me. But I was in a conversation. I was very passionate about it, which sometimes when I'm really passionate, I can come across strong. I don't mean to, but I do when I'm super passionate about something. And at some point in that conversation, the person on the other side told me that I was angry, which I wasn't. I was a long ways from angry. And so I'm telling this person, no, I'm not angry. And they were insistent, yes, you are angry. And ended up hanging up on me. And I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it, because I was not angry. The person kept insisting I was angry, which was upsetting me. But prior to that, I wasn't at all. I went back to them later, and after prayer and reflection, I went back to them later and says, look, if I misstepped, I'm really sorry. I don't know what I did wrong. If I was too passionate about what I was saying, came across too long, too harsh, if I was too enthusiastic and I had volume creep and got too loud without, just got really involved in the conversation, that can happen sometimes. The fact that I went back, they never did tell me what happened with the conversation and why they thought I was angry and why they hung up on me. I really, to this day, don't know. But when I went back to them in humility and to say, look, for anything that I did, I truly apologize. And this is what I was thinking. I wasn't upset. It helped us to have an easier relationship afterwards. And it helped me to understand more about that person when I was communicating to them in the future. It's like, okay, they react to this. And so if I'm going to talk to them about it, I need to approach it this way instead. Maybe not quite so direct and quite so forceful. Maybe I need to take a more indirect path and be a little gentler in my approach. And it worked. I would talk to that person later about things that I was disagreeing about, and it went much smoother after that. So being humble and accepting your part of it. Now, that doesn't mean taking responsibility for their actions, but taking responsibility for your own and how your actions may possibly have triggered theirs. I realize I got defensive, and I'm so sorry. Or I think I may have misunderstood you and was doing a little bit of mind reading here, and I apologize. Or that wasn't my intention. I can see how that came across, and I'm really sorry. That's not what I meant. And so owning what you did wrong and, clarifying what you initially actually meant, it shows maturity and openness, and that vulnerability and humility will make it easier for them to reciprocate. Now, they're not always going to, like I just told you in the conversation I was recounting, that person never did come back to me, but it did lower their defenses. And they weren't as aggressive with me in the future. So number 4 is to speak from I and not you. So when you're in a conversation, this is just an example. Like you're feeling unheard, or you're in a conversation and they interrupt you. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," that immediately puts them on the defensive. Instead, you could say something like, "I feel very unheard when you interrupt me." It makes the complaint about you and not about them, which helps lower those defenses, and it keeps the focus on your experience instead of their failure. So I statements can create connection instead of conflict. When you come with them with you statements like you're doing blah 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 blah, it's going to put them on the defense and it's going to increase the chances of conflict. So I statements will de-escalate that a little bit better. So we have pause before reacting, clarify, don't assume, own your part, speak from I and you. And then the fifth one and our last one is to listen to understand and not to reply. And this one is so hard, especially if you're in a conversation that you're very passionate about and you have so much to say. It is so hard to listen to understand. But listening to understand is a critical part of communication, especially when that communication involves conflict. So important to listen to understand. And I mean, this is hard for so many reasons. The brain goes so much faster than the mouth does, and so you're generating a lot more words than the other person is speaking. You're also wanting to justify yourself or your stance or explain or whatever. To put a pause on your brain for what you want to say and focus all that energy on what they are saying so that you can truly listen to understand. It takes some mental discipline. I'm not going to lie. This can be really difficult, but it is a game changer. If you can figure out how to do this, it will change so much of your conversation because you can truly understand what the other person is saying, where they're coming from, how they're feeling in that moment, and it will completely radically change your communication. Truly listening means focusing on what the other person is feeling, not just what they are saying. So you're going to be looking for body language cues that can also help you understand what they're saying and clarify that speech. This obviously would be if you're in person or on video call when you could see those visual cues. You could also, this one reason why email and texting can really quickly get out of hand because all you're seeing are words. I know we use emojis a lot, which do help. It's going to help some, but you're still missing about 90% of communication, which is through body language. But you want to try to understand what the person is feeling. So if you're talking to them on the phone or however you've got voice, that's going to help a lot because you can tell a lot by that pitch, that pace, the volume, the timbre we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of that can come through and this communication where you can sense how they're feeling instead not just the words they're actually uttering. You can also put this in context with what you know about the person. This can help inform what they're saying. You're like, okay, I know this person well enough to know that they really did not mean what they just said. So I need to figure out what's going on. And you don't want to make assumptions and jump to conclusions by mind reading, but it can shed a little bit of light on the conversation if you know the person and you can put it in context. So one thing you could try in this listening to understand and not to reply is to repeat back what you're hearing. So you could say something like, "You're feeling frustrated because it sounded like I dismissed your opinion. Is that correct?" So you don't want to put words in their mouth, but at the same time, you can ask them, "This is what I'm getting from what you're saying, your body language. Is this true?" And once you can get that point clarified, then you can move forward in clarifying the rest of it and trying to understand better. And that can completely shift the tone of a conversation by just taking a moment and say, you know, "I'm getting the sense I just hit one of your hot buttons. Is that true? What did I do and how can I fix it?" Fixing communication patterns is not easy. It's simple. I mean, there's some simple guidelines that you can follow, but it is tough. And these are habits that could have been around for 10, 20, 40, 50 years that you're trying to change. And that takes some dedication, some work, some hard work, but it is very worth it if you learn to do that. If you have someone specifically that you've had issues with, you might could just go to them and says, "Look, I know we've been having trouble communicating lately, but I really want to do better. Can you help me to know how to do better? Or this is what I heard today on this podcast with Lori. And I'm thinking maybe this could help. Even small changes, just little tiny changes in your tone, your timing, your body language can change the entire atmosphere of a relationship. So to be aware that, again, self-awareness is very critical in communication, particularly when it's going off the rails. Being aware of yourself and your own triggers and your emotional flooding and those pitches and tones that can change with the conversation. So being aware of that and making sure you're projecting the right thing can make a huge difference in your conversation. And again, for a Bible reference for those of you that follow Christ, Colossians tells us, let your conversation be always full of grace and seasoned with salt. Grace means we're choosing patience in a conversation even when we feel misunderstood. It is not excusing bad behavior, but it is extending some understanding for that and some grace and kindness. It means we're speaking truth, but speaking that truth in kindness and with care. I've heard this excuse a lot. Well, it was the truth. It may have been. It may have been absolutely gospel truth. But it doesn't mean, one, did it have to be said in the first place? And if it did it have to be said that way? Could you present it in a more kind way and with more care and compassion? So again, breaking communication patterns take time, but it is absolutely possible. You can do this. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you clarify instead of assuming, every time you choose empathy over defensiveness, you are rewiring the patterns of your communication. You're creating a safe space for communicating, for understanding, and connection. Because when communication starts to heal, relationships begin to heal. And that's where real growth and peace begin. Don't forget to submit a 5-star rating and review if you'd like to enter the $25 Amazon gift card giveaway. Just send screenshots of those to Lori at practicalsolutionsforptsd.com. Hey, my friend, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with someone you know who may be struggling with depression and anxiety? Also, would you please leave a quick review for the show? Knowing how this podcast is helping you fills my heart with so much joy, and it motivates me for future episodes. For now, it's time for Sam and I to head outside to enjoy some sunshine and fresh air. We'll see you back here on Tuesdays and Thursdays for more great episodes.